In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, guys? How's it going? I had to wear them at least one more time. So please don't give me too much crap for this. But anyways, welcome to We Are So Back Wednesday, aka another BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. Sorry if I'm a little bit closer than normal tonight, everybody. I know we're getting very up close and personal, but I am using a backup mic. Something happened to my normal mic tonight. So I just want to make sure all of you can hear me loud and clear. And we're going to just be a little bit closer than we normally are during the shows. But nonetheless, I want to welcome all of the new followers over on Rumble. I want to welcome all of the new followers over on YouTube. It's really cool to be, like I said, doing a third year of this show. We have a lot of very interesting things coming up this year. So I want to definitively tell all of you that I have stepped into the realm of public speaking. Yes, I have my first public speaking event at Liberty on the Rocks, March 19th here in Denver, Colorado. I will be breaking down what I call the solution to everything that's going on right now, the main solution that we can do to turn the tides in our favor, not just from a collective standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint within ourselves. So this is kind of a big step for me. I'm breaking into the realm of public speaking. I'm getting a whole presentation together for this. I will be streaming it live here on the channel the night I am doing it. So nonetheless, I wanted to invite all of you to that. I will remind you as it comes up a little bit closer, but I'm really pumped about it. I'm really excited about it because, I feel like this is a way we can start to get the wheels turning. Everything in motion. I feel like we've been stuck at a standstill for a little bit here in this conscious collective, and I am going to do what I can to, help push us a little bit further. But nonetheless, let's get to my guest tonight. I am super excited about her. I met her through our dear friend, Mr. Andrew Lordson. Big Daddy Drew, Heavyweights Life Feels. He actually told me to give her a follow. He was like, you need to check this person out. She's on our vibe. She's really hitting some hard points, and she's really big into wellness like you are as well. And so I went ahead and gave her a follow. And I have to say, I'm really happy I got to meet this person. She's definitely on the vibe, and I feel like she has a lot to bring to the table when it comes to what's going on with our conscious collective right now. And Autumn, who I will be speaking with tonight, Dr. Autumn is a holistic wellness professional with a PhD in holistic counseling, functional nutritional therapy practitioner, and soon to be board certified naturopathic doctor. With 20 years of experience in a private practice since 2008, Autumn combines her professional expertise with her unique gifts as a psychic empath to help clients uncover hidden physical, emotional, and energetic imbalances to help restore their health on every level. She's a mother of 3 boys and a rebel at heart. She has always defied social norms to break. I dig it because I know there's a lot of spiritual parents who are really going to look forward to hear about that part of our show. But nonetheless, let's bring her on, Mrs. Autumn Smith. Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, how are you?
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When Andrew told me to check you out, Andrew and I have become pretty good friends over the course of a couple of years, and he told me to check you out. And I was very impressed with, everything that I saw. And it's kind of really cool to sit down and, talk with somebody who, because I'm a huge believer myself, in not only physical health, on how spiritual health and physical health intertwine. And I think that is something that I still see a lot of the community missing out on. And, I don't think that collective realization has been made. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to talking to you about tonight. But first off, because this is your first time on my show, and I really like to get to know my guests, let's talk about your story a little bit, your awakening. We chatted about it during our conference call. We have Don watching in Alberta. He is letting us know he is here. We had our, thanks for being here, Don. We had our conference call, and, you told me your story, and I thought it was so profoundly interesting, just everything that you went through to get to where you are today. So, Mrs. Autumn Smith, why don't you tell us, what was that burning bush moment for you? What was that moment in your life that opened you up to seeing the world in a different light?
It's hard for me to pinpoint an exact moment. I've had a few different moments throughout my life. But I like to say that I have always just been like the weird kid for no real apparent reason. I did not grow up with any kind of influence in regards to spirituality or religious upbringing or anything like that. But I've always had this deeper sense of knowing and connection to, God, source, creator. I've just always known that there was something more. And I just had a really good intuition throughout my whole childhood. I would, hear things. I could pick up on different people's emotions and energy. At the time, I didn't know that's what I was doing. So it definitely caused a lot of anxiety. And as I got into my teenage years, a lot of depression and looking for coping skills, things to numb those sensations, the things I was feeling or picking up on. But then I became a mother at 15, and that really transformed me, because at that point, when I found out that I was pregnant, it was like, okay, everything that I was doing before doesn't even matter now. There was some switch that flipped in me, and I was like, okay, everything I do from now on is going to be for this child. And so that threw me into, growing up really fast, threw me into learning as much as I could about how to raise a child, what's healthy, and that started within my pregnancy. I wanted to have the healthiest pregnancy I possibly could with what I knew at the time, and, what I thought were good choices. And so I was doing the best I could. Mm-hmm. And so then after I had my son at the age of 16, I started working for a chiropractor, and he specialized in muscle response testing. And so for the first time, I didn't feel so crazy, because I was like, wait a minute, this is a thing. Other people can feel energy, and, we're talking to the body, and that just absolutely fascinated me. So that really threw me forward into learning everything I could about how the body works and muscle testing and how you can communicate with it, and how we have this innate intelligence that when you ask the right questions in the right way, you can get amazing answers and watch miracles happen. So I started there, and it just kind of evolved, and I knew I wanted to be part of that world, and it gave me an opportunity to practice my intuition. And so I became, more along the lines of an assistant, and ultimately would start identifying things that were going on with the patients and helping him figure out how to treat them. And so I ended up going to school for nutritional therapy, started my own practice, and then it's just really evolved more and more since then, being able to lean into my intuition and just follow the guidance that I receive.
That's a really cool story. It's really cool to sit down and talk to somebody who, also kind of became aware at a very young age. I can resonate with that. And, sometimes when we become aware that young, and we haven't exactly figured ourselves out, in entirety at that point, especially because you were young when you had a child. It can be a tough thing. It can be a very, I guess tough's not the word. It can be a very intense thing to take on. And, it's especially when you're just having a kid, and you're basically new to this world, and you're new to that perspective. And the one thing you brought up was great. You talked about the muscle testing, and being able to read energy and things like that. I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people forget when we talk about consciousness and we talk about awareness is that includes our whole being. That includes our whole body. That includes every single cell, every single muscle, every single nerve ending. I think people get really caught up with the fact that they think consciousness is all up here and awareness is all up here, but no, it's everything. So that's really cool that you kind of brought that to light. So I know you moved into a holistic healthcare practice. Was the chiropractor the initial inspiration behind that? Or was there anything else that came along that kind of really pushed you even further into opening that up and starting to help people?
I think I've always had that desire. When we would take those tests in middle school or high school of like, what kind of job should you have, right? Like I always got counselor or nurse or, something along those lines. I think I've always had a desire to help and to heal on some level. And then being in that environment of the chiropractic office and like I said, watching these miracles take place and witnessing it and being a part of it, and then, allowing my intuition to speak to me and then to say those things out loud and to have that validation, that confirmation from the doctor, from the patient. It was like, oh, okay, there is something to this,
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I always had psychic insight, but you don't talk about it. You didn't talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. You didn't tell people stuff because you're a weirdo. And so you just kept it to yourself. And then you're like, oh, yep, that happened. I knew that was going to happen, but you don't know what to do with that information. Or I had a lot of, psychic dreams and visions. I knew things were going to happen. So, I'm grateful for the experience and that I was able to be a part of that and realize I have a gift to share, it took me a long time to get to that point where I was like, no, this is my gift to share. I get to do this for my career and for work. And, but I think owning it instead of being scared of it or scared of it's really like scared of what other people are going to think about it.
Mm. It is. It's when we're young and we're first kind of starting to find this stuff out, we're still in that environment where we want that acceptance, and talking about insights like that, or any even heavy intuition, it used to be frowned upon, but the good news is it's no longer not. It no longer is. People are. It's interesting. It's crazy. The change that we've seen. In the past just mere 5 years when it comes to that. And I think, that's why a lot of us, went through these heavy experiences when we were younger, is to condition us and to train us, for how things are going to evolve. I think that's pretty cool. I understand what you mean by not being able to share everything with everybody. I think now that we've all come into our own, we've kind of I've lost the care. I'm sure you have also. And but no, nonetheless, let's move on. So let's kind of let's talk about a little bit what we spoke about at the beginning, one of our talking points we have here. So what was a big realization for you, in your own words? When did you really discover that spiritual and physical health intertwine? I'm sure there was a moment for you where you saw some kind of correlation that kind of just made this light bulb go off, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's how it works. So I'm curious, what was that moment for you that kind of made you have that realization? And has that definitely affected your practice at all and how you work with other people?
Yeah. So again, there have been several situations, and when I was working for the chiropractor, he also did neuroemotional technique. And so I got a glimpse of how the nervous system reacts when there's an underlying emotional thing that's going on. And, we also have to understand, and this is something that I learned early on, that all of our emotions originate from our organs. So different organs produce different emotions. And so if you have some suppressed emotion, it will actually hinder that organ's ability to function. And then eventually, that and many other reasons, it will lead to a physical manifestation of something. And so that was my early understanding of it.
Very cool.
Then when I'm working on, I remember I was working on one patient with the chiropractor, and he was having a really hard time figuring out, like, what does her heart need? What does her heart need? You know, he couldn't find the right supplement that was going to shut off this heart reading. And so he had brought me into the room, and I just put my hand on her. And as soon as I put my hand on her, I felt this jolt in my heart. And I didn't know what he was working on. I hadn't been in the room, so I didn't know what he was trying to do. But I had just put my hand on her. I felt that jolt in my heart, and I just looked at her, and I couldn't even control myself. I don't normally just blurt things out, but it was just so immediate. I said, "Oh my gosh, you have a broken heart." And she just started crying. She just burst into tears.
Aww.
And then we realized, you know, he couldn't shut off this heart reading because it wasn't a nutritional issue. It was the emotional issue. And so we talked with her through what was going on. And then after she talked it out and was able to identify what was really going on and wasn't suppressing it, the heart reading turned off. So that was kind of like one of the very first light bulb moments. But then throughout my personal practice as a nutritional therapist, I'm working on my clients early on, and, you know, we would get them better to a certain point. But then eventually, you know, my intuition's just screaming at me, like, this is not a nutritional problem. This is an emotional problem. And so again, I had to just really trust that and lean into it and start doing more emotional work. And that came later on in my practice. To where eventually I would, around like 2020 is when my practice totally flipped from doing, you know, 95% nutritional work with 5% emotional. It totally flipped to 95% emotional with 5% nutritional. I would say at this point, I'm like, you know, still heavy on the emotional side of things, because that is a core foundation that will cause so many issues. And we're not just talking about, you know, oh, stress affects the body. That is not what we're talking about here. There is an energetic and an emotional cause behind every physical manifestation, everything that happens in the body. So if we're just trying to address something from the physical aspect or from the, you know, nutritional, exercise, structural, you are missing a huge part of how that even was able to happen in the first place, because there is this energetic piece that was ripe, you know, this, like, because of this emotion or because of some energetic imbalance, it allowed that physical thing to take over.
That is so surreal and profound to have witnessed. I mean, especially with the heart, with the patient, with the chiropractor, and, you know, seeing on how these emotional issues manifest. I mean, you're kind of hitting the point home on how important your inner work is at this point in time. And you guys have heard me stress that on this show quite a bit. Your inner work is insanely important, because this is what can happen. If you are holding on to things, they can manifest into physical symptoms. I had a realization when, you know, I've been training for a long time and all that. I remember I wasn't making the progress I wanted, and I was getting upset with my body. But then what ended up happening was I felt the anger that I was taking out on my body, and it started to manifest into different things. And that was the telltale sign for me. I was like, there is a definite correlation here. And it's really cool to hear someone with your credentials kind of acknowledge that and, you know, kind of put that out there, because I think this is something that really needs to be held in collective awareness. So thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to ask you real quick, and this is something that's definitely kind of plays into that too. Have you potentially in any ways, like, had your clients do any kind of internal alchemy, have you recommended to them any kind of yoga by chance? Because I've noticed that, at least in my own practice, that helps kind of released these things to be acknowledged. So I'm not sure if you've ever recommended that to any of your clients. I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do to help bring these things to the surface and work through it. That's a big part of what I do in my practice. Is one of my gifts is the ability to tune into somebody's energy and help them identify exactly what is going on. So I can get into the subconscious mind and say, okay, tell me about this. I'm feeling this emotion at this age, having to do with this situation. Tell me what that means to you. So it will bring these things up, and then we have an opportunity to identify what's there, work through it, release it. But I always encourage them to do more work around it, right? Because
Awesome.
I can bring something up, but they really have to take it in and see how it's playing out in their daily life. Where do they need to acknowledge it? Where is it hurting them in any aspect? And then what can they do about it? So yoga is great. Physical exercise is great because it will help actually release emotion. Sweat and tears release emotion. But journaling is one of my absolute favorites. I love journaling, and I recommend it to everyone, because when you can be vulnerable just with yourself, which I think a lot of people have a hard time doing, they struggle acknowledging their emotions. But when you can just put it down in a notebook for nobody else to see, you can burn those pages if you want. And writing it out, like the physical act of getting the words out of your body onto paper, you are healing right there when you are acknowledging it, getting it physically out of your body. But also I think when you just spend time with it, and because we're so used to just suppressing and pushing it down and not dealing with it. When you just spend time thinking about, how do I feel about that? What is that bringing up for me? Why am I angry about that? It's amazing.
It truly is, because you're taking that time, and a lot of people, in some ways when they're doing this kind of work, when you bring this up, they're almost reliving it a little bit, not to the magnitude of the initial experience, but they're reliving it a little bit. And in that way, it's kind of like, I think somebody on my X said it really good. Doing the internal work is almost like having a life review before you pass on. It kind of burns away that karma. And it's interesting, when you look at that correlation between the emotions and the organs as well. I'm sure now you've gotten pretty good at picking out what could potentially be going on, based on what this person is experiencing or feeling. And Andrew just chimed in. Even simple yin yoga a few times a week has been life-changing for me. Hell yeah, Andrew, thanks for being here, man. And but no, the one thing I want to ask you, we're going to dive a little bit deeper on that before we get to our next talking point, is there kind of I'm looking for the words to describe this. Is there a kind of blanket of emotional issues you see in the people that you work with? Because when we take a look at our collective right now as a whole, we see a lot of not so great things going on. And I feel in a lot of ways that these not so great things can manifest in ourselves if we're not aware of it, through the collective consciousness of humanity. And, and plus, what we deal with in our everyday life, things have definitely gotten a little tougher than they used to be. So I'm just curious if you've seen almost a kind of, what I would say, a constant similar issue between a lot of people that they're dealing with at this point in time.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has their own, things based off their personal experiences. But I would say overall, what I see in my clients and what I see in the world is that everybody wants to feel worthy, loved, and valued. That's it. We all want the same things.
Oh, absolutely. And I think everybody is deserving of that. And everybody, you need to tell yourselves you're deserving of that. We're our biggest limiter when it comes to that. We can be our own biggest heroes, but we can also be our own biggest critics. We can be hypercritical of ourselves. And that's my little reminder to all of you, like I do. Remember to give yourself some grace. Okay. It is all right. We're all kind of going through the ringer on a spiritual level. We're all being metaphysically waterboarded in a little bit, kind of in a way at this point in time. So Well, Autumn, thanks for that. No, I really like what you're doing. Keep doing that. I think it's very innovative. I think it is. I think it's true healthcare. Honestly, I think this is real healthcare. Getting to core issues and understanding the balance between your emotional and physical health, and finding that alignment between the two. Like, I mean, I think that's a perfect way to be doing things, and that is a good way to be describing health at this point. So, thanks for that.
Thank you.
One of the things I want to talk to you about, because I have a lot of friends who are parents, and whether they're in the anarchist community, the conscious collective, the spiritual community. I myself am not a parent yet, but for all the parents listening tonight, I know it can be a very interesting thing to be a spiritual parent in these times. Especially trying to look out for the health of your children, the well-being of your children, and making sure they're not getting indoctrinated themselves by everything that's going on. So, just kind of on a footnote, just how interesting is it being a spiritual parent in the matrix system that we're currently in? And if you have any tips and tricks for the parents out there to kind of help them with some of the struggles that they might be going through, let's have a listen to them. I'm sure it would help them big time.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to lie. It's hard. It's hard trying to be, well, not trying to be, but, being this way as a parent, raising children, growing up in this world now. It's not like anything we have ever experienced before. And, when we were growing up, I think about, in the 90s, the early 2000s, my oldest is 20. And this is something that my heart breaks for him, because when we were growing up, when we were teenagers, we could think about doing anything that we wanted. Like anything was possible. We had hope for the future. We thought anything that we wanted to accomplish, we could do. Anywhere we wanted to go, we could go. But as I'm watching my son trying to create a life for himself now, and watching his friends, and as they were graduating from high school, it's just that everything is so different now, because like we're all just waiting. Like anything could happen at any moment. And so it's really hard for these kids who are growing up in this to feel hopeful about the future, and to think about, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do? Because we're like, is there even going to be a world? I mean, I believe there is, but it's hard when you're a kid witnessing all of this chaos and the fear. My biggest struggle, I think, from where I'm at with my oldest son, is how do I help him maintain hope and feel optimistic about his future and about what he can accomplish. And, I've watched him really struggle with depression. And he said to me just over the summer, actually, he was like, I'm just really feeling like a huge loser. I feel like I feel like a failure in everything. And I'm like, son, listen to me. Promise you, you know what? You're always going to feel like a failure. And I mean that in a good way, because we all feel like we're failing all the time. And so, I was explaining to him, like, you're not a failure. You're not failing at anything. The reason you feel this way is because we're told that we're failing all the time. We're told that we should have this. This is our measure of success, right? And that American dream, the idea of what life should be, does not exist anymore, but they're still kind of dangling it over you, saying this is what you should strive for. And so I had a really good talk with him about that, and helping him understand, like, that we don't live in that world. That does not exist. So that cannot be your measure of how you're doing. If you are finding something that you enjoy, he has a girlfriend he's been with for a long time, so you've got someone to love, you enjoy your job, like, you're killing it. You are killing it in life. But
no, I would completely agree.
Yeah. It made him feel better to know that, okay, everybody feels like they're failing, like this is just something that people will feel. And I don't mean that we are failing in any way. It's just something that we have to acknowledge is there, and redefine our definition of success and what we want for our life, because it's not what they're telling us.
Absolutely. I think we go through that. At least sometimes it'll happen in certain weeks. It'll happen once a day for me. I'll be like, am I doing everything the way that I would really like to be doing everything? Yeah. And, and then all of a sudden it snaps back into me and it's like, oh, you wouldn't be who you are today if you weren't doing what you were doing. So be grateful for that. No. And I think that's something, that a lot of the kids are dealing with at this point in time that we didn't really have to. I mean, we were kind of, I joke that we were on the edge of blissful ignorance. I mean, it was a different time back then. And, we looked at, the American dream as if it was something that was achievable. And then as the years went on, it's like we saw it get like dragged further and further and further away. And, by the time we were adults, we're like, dang, this is not what everybody said it was going to be. And I think that's a true moment for us, man. But, I think the number one thing that I've always, and, I tell people this all the time, even a 16th of a step a day is progress. Even a 32nd of a step a day is progress. And, I think a lot of times, especially being in this very different world that we grew up in, I feel like there is a lot of unrealistic expectations sometimes placed on the kids too. Thanks for sharing that. That was really cool. So we have a couple of comments. We have Cody Shyrock. He was telling Kyle that we need to put you two into contact. Have fun. I don't know if you know Cody and Kyle.
Yeah, we all went to school together.
Oh, okay. This is where so did you go to school with Andrew too?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool. So now it all makes sense. All right,
Yep.
Got it. So no, we had Cody and Kyle. Andrew and I had Cody and Kyle back on the show back in season 2. And guess what? I'm really happy you guys tune in every night, Cody and Kyle. Thanks for that, man. I think that's great. And then we have Don Rogers from March 4th Production saying, I drive a septic truck and I've never had a better life. But in realness, man, it's like it's happiness is chosen. The other thing I would ask you, from the spiritual parent perspective, would be this. How did you kind of put forth effort into making sure, in a lot of ways, your kids didn't get looped up with the indoctrination? Mm-hmm. And really taught them how to think for themselves? I know this is getting deep, but I know a lot of spiritual parents in our community struggle with this. So that's definitely what why I'm asking you that. So what were kind of your methods, your tips and tricks to helping your children be critical thinkers and to not just go with the mom?
I have so many things I want to say about this. And okay. Well, I'm going to tell you.
Time. Yeah, no worries.
Okay. I think in my journey, my parental journey here that I've taken with my children, it started at birth with them. I will be completely honest. My oldest is vaccinated until the age of 3, and my younger 2 are not vaccinated at all. And I think that has played a big role in how I want to parent my children and why I chose that. And now, we're starting to kind of see some truth behind some of those things. I guess I won't go into that too much, but I feel like that has played a huge role in how I have chose to educate them, raise them, their immune system, a lot of things with that. And then in their education, I have always opted for an alternative schooling structure or homeschool. So my oldest son did go public school all the way. And I will tell you, there's a major difference between him. And I don't mean this in a negative way, because I think everybody is on the journey that they're supposed to be on. But the way that he looks at life and approaches life and his ideas are very different than what I've seen, with my other 2. Again, it's not necessarily like a fair comparison because everybody's going to be different, but I'm just saying what I watched him go through and what I saw him take on as these ideas based off of what he was being taught, based off of his peers, you know, who he was around. It's very different. And so for my younger ones, we have always chosen to do an alternative schooling structure, which I think has been very beneficial for them. The other thing is I never really treated my children like children. I mean, I did and I didn't. I've always had very open, honest conversations with them, appropriate to their age, but I've always been very upfront and honest. And there's, you know, a saying that we have in our house is like, it's not weird unless you make it weird, because I want my kids to know they can talk to me about anything and everything. And like I said, I've got 3 boys, right? And I'm a girl. And so I've had to get real cool real fast talking about all sorts of things because I want them to come to me or, you know, my husband with their questions and their concerns. I don't want them Googling things or talking to their dumb friends that don't have the answers. I want them to come to me or to, you know, to a trusted adult where they know everything's okay. Nothing is bad. Nothing is weird. Nothing is awkward. They don't have to be embarrassed about anything. Let's talk about everything. So now they feel comfortable with it. You know, they will all, I mean, sometimes I wish they weren't so comfortable with it, but that's my thing, right? Like, we're good. We're good. I would much rather have my kids know that they can come to me with anything. So we've taken a very different approach as far as our health, what we eat, you know, what we do for self-care, for medical care, and how we receive our education, what they're exposed to. And they are not sheltered by any means. I mean, my kids play video games, they're on YouTube, they're doing things that normal kids are doing. But we just have a slightly different view of things. And I have always been a huge proponent of talking, obviously open communication in our household, but helping them work through any kind of emotional thing that they may be feeling. And so helping them understand how to communicate effectively to each other, right? Like, we don't have to argue, you know, the brothers, like, they don't have to argue. We can just say, hey, I'm feeling this way, and here's what I need, you know. And listening to my kids talk to each other, it's like, I am such a proud mom listening to them. My 14-year-old said to my 12-year-old the other day, he's like, hey, you don't have to get mad at me. We can just talk about it. Like, yes, good job.
No, that's amazing. Like, that's amazing to hear that you've kind of just, it seems like in a lot of ways you've gone with the flow, but you've implemented what I would call like core spiritual structure into your household, you know, being open and honest communication, expressing feelings in an open and honest way, like, you know, having that you know, not sheltering them, because I think that's one of the biggest things that, you know, at least, even though I'm not a parent, but I remember like when I was a kid and my parents told me, don't do this or don't look at this or don't do something, and it was because I said so was the reason. It just made me want to do it even more. And it made me want to, you know, rebel against that. But no, I think that's awesome. And I mean, thanks for kind of giving your little bit of a peek into that. I know that's a little personal, but I know it's going to help a lot of people out. And, you know, because I have friends who are anarchist parents, and they're like, you're an anarchist until you have kids. And then you know, it's a weird approach, because, you know, like you believe in no authority, but your children at that same time, you have to be the authority to them. So it almost kind of like becomes a toss up, and it's like, wow. I'm like, am I rethinking anarchism, or should I just write a book, How to Be an Anarchist Parent? I'm not sure at this point, but no, thanks for that little bit of insight. And yeah, let's dive into the juicy stuff that I have here. So one of the things I want to talk with you is breaking down the spiritual and health warfare with our food, and how our food industry reciprocates with Big Pharma and the medical industrial complex. This is something that I think both you and I share a passion in. You know, one of the biggest things, you know, that I've been seeing with our food a lot lately is, in some ways, it's been getting worse. It's almost as if they're attempting to, because people like me and you, we didn't take the COVID vaccine. And of course, there's a lot of rumors that they're putting the mRNA stuff in the food. I don't know. I haven't really seen anything concrete on that. If you have, definitely please share. But nonetheless, I think that's where a lot of this warfare starts on our spirits, our minds, and our bodies, is through the food we intake. I mean, you look at everything we intake is essentially energy, and we look at the food, and that is a form of energy that we're intaking. So in your experience, what are some of the biggest things that you've seen that have kind of brought forth that realization that, they're fucking with our food, and this is almost some kind of a warfare? Why are they doing this? I mean, one of the biggest things for me I saw was, so our mitochondria produces endogenous DMT. It's actually one of the things in our body that produces this endogenous psychedelic. And wouldn't you know that glyphosate directly destroys that aspect of the mitochondria? Well, wouldn't you know? That's a coincidence right there, right? But no, let's hear some of the things that you've seen that have made you realize there is a type of warfare going on with our food.
I mean, I've seen, like, you just look at anything, right?
Exactly.
It's hard to say, like, how is it not? Because I think it's crazy that we have to pay more money for food that hasn't been poisoned, first of all. I think it's crazy that they're making it harder and harder for organic farmers but yet they're paying all of this money to the farmers who are growing GMO crops. I think it's crazy that the farmers can't use seeds anymore. Like, they have to purchase seeds every year. I mean, all of this is insane.
Absolutely.
I have this, I don't think it's a theory, but my thought on this is, I don't necessarily think that they're trying to kill us. I think that they're trying to bring us as close as they can to death and keep us as sick as possible for as long as possible. Right?
I would completely agree.
That's what they want. The more we need medical care because of preventable diseases, everything that we have going on right now in America, for the most part, is preventable. Everything is diet and lifestyle related. The number one cause of death for Americans is cardiovascular issues. Or why are we now seeing so many children with colon cancer? Why are we seeing so many gastrointestinal issues? I mean,
Type 1 diabetes too has been like huge among kids. I've seen like the surgence of it. Yeah.
Right. Autoimmune diseases. I mean, childhood cancers, just going through like, why are we seeing all of this? And it's because we are ingesting, whether that be through the food, through the water, breathing in through the air, all of these toxins that we were never meant to have in our system. Not only that, but just like what you were saying with the pesticides, it actually causes mitochondrial collapse. And I find this on my clients all the time. They'll come to me and, like, no matter what they do, they just can't seem to get better. They have really low energy. Like, their body literally doesn't even have the energy to heal because their mitochondria have collapsed due to pesticide exposure. And that's not just because they're out there, spraying their lawn. I mean, we're eating it on everything. So it's just, at this point, I just don't understand how anybody can even question, what they're doing. Like, and most people aren't even eating whole foods. Most people are eating food-like products. They're not eating fruits and vegetables at all. They're eating convenience things. So you take something that is completely artificial. There's no real ingredients in it whatsoever. They spray it with fake minerals, fake vitamins that are made from coal tar. And then you microwave it in plastic. This is what most people are doing.
It is. And what's crazy about that plastic is, a lot of the times it can contain Teflon compounds too. In a lot of the plastic bags and the foods. And, like, one of the biggest things I am so against is we quite literally are getting Nazi concentration camp levels of fluoride in the population. We are. And because it's not just the toothpaste. It's not just the water. It's Teflon. If you're cooking with a Teflon pan, if you're buying store-bought popcorn bags, if you're using like store-bought cans, a lot of them have, Teflon fluorocarbons in there. It's unreal. And, and that's one of the biggest things that was like a huge thing for me. Also, too, it is now starting to surface also that, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I'll ask you this, that actually parasites are potentially also a cause of a lot of the physical symptoms that are going on too, not just for help with parasites. There's a lot of people who are claiming that parasites are actually one of the main causes of cancer. And doctors do not tell you about them. They do not. They, there was actually, I remember this report, this lady had a UTI and they took some kind of sample. I don't remember what the sample was exactly, but they were looking at it under a microscope. They were analyzing it, and they saw this larva of some kind. So she ended up writing in the report that there was some kind of parasitic infection, and then the doctor removed that from the report. So what are your thoughts on that as well? Because that seems to be something that's been surfacing a lot more in the information stream in our collective. So I'm just curious if you've seen something like that or you've come across anything like that.
Yeah, I find parasites on people all the time. I've been finding them for 20 years on people all the time. And unless they're in the GI tract, they don't typically find them because they're going to test from a stool sample usually. And they're not going to find parasites anywhere else in the body unless it's on an autopsy is where they usually find them. But parasites absolutely love the heart and the brain. Those are their favorite places to hang out. What do parasites do? Parasites feed off of dead and dying tissue, first of all. The other thing is, if we're ingesting or we inhale, through the air or we're ingesting a parasite, they shouldn't be allowed to live because once you ingest it, your stomach acid should kill it. But that's the other thing is that people have such poor gut health because of what they're eating. They don't have the hydrochloric acid or the enzymes to digest the parasite. And then it has the ability to travel into the system and, move wherever it wants to go. I have found newborn babies being born with parasites because they cross through.
Wild.
My son had one and it was it was causing colic in him. I mean, so these things are real, they happen, but we have to look at the environment of the body. Here, again, sorry, I've got so many thoughts, but
no, keep going. No, this is getting good. Keep going. Okay. Yeah.
The environment of the body has to be a place that is healing. I mean, as we've talked about, your body knows exactly what to do. It knows exactly how to handle every invader there is, but it can only do so much. If you don't have the proper tools, if you don't have the building blocks that it needs, what's it supposed to do? It has to just do the best it can, right? So I have also found that I would agree, cancer can be caused by parasites. And it also shows up that way energetically. I've worked with a few people who have had cancer, received a cancer diagnosis. And when I was testing them, it showed up as a parasite. But again, what does a parasite do? A parasite takes the nutrients from the host. And that's basically what cancer does. So we've got to be looking at the environment of the body. If you have a healthy environment, parasites should not be allowed to live. Now, here's the other really big thing, just like I said, how every single physical ailment and dis-ease has an emotional and energetic connection. Do you know what the emotional cause of parasites is?
Let me hear it.
Victim mentality.
No.
Yes.
Damn. Okay.
It's
that's a heavy one.
Yes. So think of that. So someone thinks, there's nothing I can do. It's out of my control. I can't do anything. It's a parasite. What am I supposed to do? Right. But that thinking in everything, it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do. I'm a victim. Well, that is a sure way to get parasites in your body because you're saying, I don't have control over my body.
No, I would completely agree with that. So since we're on this topic, because you somewhat hinted at it, how do you feel about terrain theory? Have you heard of terrain theory? because you kind of just lay that out there, you know, because when our body is in a healthy, aligned, positive state, we naturally repel this, you know, it cannot exist within us, you know, but when we are not in that healthy, aligned state and our terrain is not healthy as well within our body, that's what attracts that stuff. I mean, do you feel that this could be the case? I know there's a lot of people. I did a episode back in season 1 about the whole Bichamp and Pasteur scandal that happened in the late 1800s. And, you know, Bichamp was the original French scientist who was the proponent of terrain theory, you know, which I think is personally a very sound theory. And but then you had Pasteur, who, you know, came out with pasteurization. He's the guy who invented germ theory and all that. He had the social connections. Was probably a Mason. On top of that, also, you know, that's how it rolls. But his theory ended up being the mainstay. So, what are your thoughts on terrain theory? Do you think that this is a more accurate depiction for health for us when it comes to fighting off these potential illnesses? Because it just adds to what you're saying. If we keep our body in a healthful, aligned state, that we will forever stay healthy.
Yes, and I would add to, you know, in addition to what is going on internally, physically, what's the gut health, all of that, again, looking at the emotional and the spiritual levels too. We have to always remember that counts as part of our foundation. That's, you know, when we're talking about terrain, I'm including all of these things as the foundational piece, which is going to keep us healthy. But the other part of that is, just like we were talking about, at this point, we are now being exposed to things that we have not previously been exposed to before, right? We have new viruses, we have new things that are circulating that our system has not been exposed to. But my personal thought on that is the body knows what to do. So we get exposed to it and the body's like, oh, okay, I can adapt to this. But we have to make sure that our body is in a solid foundation at its core, that it can adapt to those things. If we have, again, poor gut health, poor mental state, we're full of fear, we're full of anger, and we're eating crap food, you're not going to be able to adapt so well.
Absolutely. I would completely agree. You are speaking my language 100%. So we have a comment here from Diana, Transcending Ascension. She said, parasites are a major battle for us now. I've been telling people negative entities use or are parasites. Removing them should be a priority. That is definitely something I would like to talk to you about after that. And then we have Kyle chiming in. I am unfortunately suffering from a genetic disease which is not manifested emotionally or energetically. I completely understand and empathize, Kyle. I get it. I definitely want to talk with you one-on-one to see if we can help you out with that in some way. I'm sure Autumn would be up for that too. So definitely, man, we want to help you. But that's one correlation a lot of people have made. And, you know, for me, because of the as above, so below principle, it makes a world of sense on, you know, how physical parasites could actually be a manifestation of energetic parasites as well. So in your practice, what do you think about that? Have you ever experienced something like that as well?
Energetic attachments?
Yeah. So did they manifest in the form of a parasite, or have you ever experienced that? Because there's a lot of people who believe in that correlation, that when you have a physical parasite, it could potentially be a manifestation of an energetic one.
I have found that. Yes.
Oh, very interesting.
And I will also say that I think probably like, I mean, if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say at least 95% of the energetic attachments, at least that I have experienced with clients and my own view on this, not saying it's 100% right, just my own personal opinion, is that these energetic attachments are manifestations of your own subconscious. And so you create this idea, this fear, you know, or a trauma or something has given it life, and then it is allowed to manifest.
I would completely agree. I think, one of the biggest things that we can do is just have overall awareness of ourselves, our thought patterns, and how we react to certain things and how our traumas affect us. Because if we continuously walk forward without trying to heal ourselves, we can open ourselves up. We can open these doors to these attachments. Thank you for answering that, Miss Autumn. Very appreciated. Let's move on to our next one. So, real quick, one of the biggest things I want to talk about with you is I've seen this in a few of your reels, and you've kind of laid it out. And I'm a huge fan of the way that you describe this because I think of it the exact same way. Let's talk about New Earth consciousness for just a second here. I still think a lot of people have, and I'm not saying this won't happen once we all get to that point. I think a lot of people think we're going to still go poof. We're in 5D now. Look at that. Just poof. We're here. Like, awesome. You know what I mean? I think that's a huge misconception. But one of the biggest things I want to talk to you about on how is actually a frequency of consciousness. It is actually a new way of being and a new way of life. And I think that's something a lot of us are kind of starting to understand in our own, personal journeys. But I've heard you speak about this in a few of your reels. So let's kind of chat about this for a second. What do you feel at some point that we could potentially, if enough of us got there, we could experience a different frequency? That's something, that we throw around a lot. And also too, like, what is one of the biggest things you would tell to somebody that New Earth starts from within, not looking from without? Because I still feel like we have a lot of people in our community that still think the Astral Command is going to, swoop down and save us, and with their capes, and we have, Jesus might swoop down in his cape too and save us all. But let's talk empowerment here for a sec. So, what would you say to people in your own words, how New Earth is a frequency of consciousness, a new way of being, and a new way of life?
So I understand that this might be a really hard concept for some, depending on where you're at, with your beliefs. But my thought on this, from what I have, felt intuitively, psychically, different visions, meditations, things like that I've had, I believe that we will have this all coexisting at the same time. What you're going to see, though, is the people who are really doing the inner work and choosing love and wanting to create a better world and not getting caught up in the fear and the chaos and the drama, but choosing to be a light in the world. It automatically raises, the frequency, right? Like we know, we should know this by now, I think, like love has a very high frequency. Anger, hate, shame, all of those have a very low frequency. Like that can actually be measured. And so when you are, and we're not saying that you're going to be like this every day, right? Like, of course I get angry. Of course I feel these negative emotions, but we're saying, generally speaking, if that is your state of being, where you are not watching the news all the time and you're not getting caught up in everything that's happening and you're choosing to put good into the world and you're choosing to help, what we're going to see is these two worlds coexisting at the same time. So you're going to have some people who seem to be suffering a lot and seem to be severely affected by whatever is going on. And then you're going to have other people who seem to be finding a new way forward and actually thriving, which that in itself, I think, is going to cause another kind of like surge for these people to do some deep emotional work as well, because I think a lot of the people who are going to be thriving will feel guilt about that and wonder, why are they doing okay when the world is in complete chaos? And so I think that's going to bring some other issues for people to work through. But that's what I see happening. It's all going to be here at the same time. Nobody's, yeah, I mean, that'd be cool if somebody wants to come down on a spaceship or something and take us away. Like, that's cool. I'm fine with that, you know, but I just don't see that happening. I think that there are going to be people who are moving into cities, you know, more of like the smart city type of situation that they have some plans for. And then there are going to be other people who are moving away from the cities, where they're going to maybe be more self-sufficient and kind of homesteading and live very simple, minimalistic lives, where you take a step back in time almost. And then you've got the people who have taken a step forward into the future of technology and all the things. I think we're going to see it happening at the same time.
I agree with you completely. I think you summed it up in a very good way, because, you know, you're going to have, I actually heard this on a podcast a long time ago. What you're going to have is almost a deviation and a split. Jay Widener, I'm giving you a shout out because I heard this on Reality Check, even though I really don't want to give you a shout out, but I am. He was talking about how you're going to have people who, there's almost going to be a split, and you're going to have people who are okay with the, you know, totalitarian authoritarian regime, completely okay with it, being in their 15-minute cities plugged into Neuralink and all of that. And then you're going to have people like us who decide to not want it anymore. We're good with this. We don't want to be transhumanists and combine our bodies with AI and all of that. So we're going to continue to move forward in our own way. And honestly, that, at least in my eyes, is a good thing. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And you even brought up how, you know, we're going to be kind of have this look at all of these people suffering. I think one of the biggest things that we've been conditioned for in our journeys is to be stewards for this. So we are going to have to, even though they called us crazy, even though they called us conspiracy theorists, even though they did all this stuff to us, we're going to have the strength to grab their hand after they've fallen, you know. And I think that's a big job for us that we're coming up to see in the future. And speaking of that, since you kind of brought it up, what are your thoughts on the fires? I've got to ask at this point in time. I'm going to be 100% honest. I've been so swamped lately, I haven't had the time to do proper research, but I have seen, I do see the correlation with the 15-minute cities, because out here in Colorado, I don't know if you remember the Louisville fire that happened a few years back, but a very strange fire in and of itself too. But Louisville became a 15-minute city, I think, a few months just before that happened. So what are your thoughts? Do you think it was, I know a lot of people think it was direct energy weapons, and then they have some people saying it was intentional arson. I'm not claiming either or, but let's hear your thoughts.
I can't say what happened. All I can say is I think there's way too many coincidences. You know,
I would agree.
I don't think it's natural, is what I'm saying. There's a lot going on there.
We got. Have you ever heard the term coincidence theorist?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll send you a meme, but you know, it's they call it the coincidence theorists who think they think even the most extreme correlations are coincidences. That's kind of like like their default mode. So it's like so yeah, that's what we kind of call that, the people who are like, oh, it's just a coincidence. We call them coincidence theorists and all that, because they, like I said, the most direct correlations they still deny. So I just had to get your thoughts on that. It's been, my thing is this. I think I'm sure you've noticed this too. Let's kind of break off on this, but a lot of these incidents and events, they ultimately always seem to filter down and affect the spiritual community at its core. And I mean, the biggest thing I saw with that was, I've seen it with other things too. I mean, when the flat earth psyop came out, I'm not saying it's a psyop or not. Please, nobody get their feathers in a bunch for what I'm saying. But when flat earth came out, you know, that drove a wedge in the spiritual community, because, and still to this day, like, you cannot get a flat earther and a round earther to have any kind of civil conversation or civil discourse. It always ends up in ad hominems and insults and getting kicked out of a chat room or whatever else kind of falls into that. And then you have COVID. And I think COVID was one of the biggest things that I saw, because that drove a massive wedge into the spiritual community. And I mean, what I saw was you have people like us who we believe freedom and, you know, bodily autonomy are very spiritual things. And the choice to do what we want with our bodies are very spiritual things. And then I feel like you had the other half of the spiritual community kind of like fall prey to the narrative. Like they kind of ended up, they placated to the situation is the best thing I'm trying to say. And then, then we look at a lot of the other events that are coming in. Even this fire has this division wedge. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, like whether these events could be staged or not, I feel that they are utilized as division tactics to divide us up even further and cause us to argue amongst ourselves even further. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like that's all they do about anything is to just make everybody argue amongst themselves about what's going on. And then they continue to do things behind the scenes while we're all angry at each other. That just really gets to me, you know, because if everyone could just stop fighting and realize we're on the same team and we all want the same thing, and then realize who is actually pulling all of the strings. I mean, we could accomplish some really amazing things and create a beautiful world if we just stopped.
100%. Could you imagine a unified conscious collective? Dude, we would quite literally be casting mountains into the sea. It would be, and I think they fear that. That's one of the biggest things, because if we all did get on some kind of unified front, which is something I am really working towards. It is a tremendous battle, but Andrew's been assisting me. Thank you, Andrew, for tossing me all the good ideas you do. But no, I completely agree with you, because that is the biggest thing. I mean, in my eyes, it is the most obvious solution to the current situation we have at hand, is if that we all just dropped, even temporarily dropped our petty, minute differences and understood we had to, at least at this point, unify to tackle this current situation. One of the biggest things I feel is that action in and of itself, just doing that would be enough to flip the entire table over. And that's good that you're also preaching that message. We need more people working towards that, because, you know, I feel like a lot of the, and I'm sure you've seen it too, a lot of the conspiracy content creators and a lot of, you know, even certain spiritual content creators, I feel in a lot of ways they add to the dysfunction that's going on.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, all righty, Miss Autumn, we have, what would we say? Yeah, Don Rogers said some believe parasites can be demonic entities. Definitely. We have Cody saying, thanks for being understanding. Of course, Cody, no problem, man. That is so weird. You guys all know each other. I knew there was something. I was like, how do they all know each other? I mean, I kind of figured like maybe you and Andrew had known each other or met at some point, but y'all went to school together. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So, and I mean, nonetheless, since we'll kind of finish off on this topic, the psychology and the nature of governments and their control. I mean, we kind of started laying that out right there for a little bit. But, we look at this government and, you know, potentially all of the underlying facets of it, whether I don't know if you've heard me use the term invisible college before, but basically what that is it describes the collective of secret occult orders and intelligence agencies that kind of bolster up the government and its narrative. But that's, I think, one of the biggest things a lot of people have become, they've lost touch with, is just basic human nature, human psychology, and the psychology of governments. And I think we can kind of see that playing out full throttle at this point in time. So I guess my question to you would be, how do you potentially make your clients aware of this stuff? Is this a subject that you preach with them, number one? And two, how do you help in your own way kind of spread this awareness to be discerning and to understand the psychology of these governments? Because what one of the biggest things I'm going to take, actually Andrew's been getting a lot of shout outs this show, but I'm going to say he has a very cool quote that I absolutely love. Not everything is a psyop, but most things are. So which I completely agree with. So yeah, have you ever breached this with your clients at all, talking about how this happens, and what is your own way that you spread awareness to be kind of discerning and have some caution when it comes to what's going on right now?
When it comes to working with my clients, I do not put forth my personal views or opinions very often, because I feel like my role is just to be there to support that person in whatever it is that they're experiencing and help them understand what they're feeling and why they're feeling it. My opinion doesn't matter, honestly.
Gotcha.
If they ask me my opinion, I will offer it to them. But I know too that just because it's my opinion, it doesn't mean it's right. That's just what I believe. And I think everybody should be able to live a life that works in alignment with them. And so that's really how I go about it with my clients, is help them identify their core values and what feels authentic to them. The biggest thing that I do, I would say that I maybe push for, not that I'm pushing for it, but I mean, encourage, is that they learn how to tune into their own intuition and trust that inner voice and connect to whatever higher power that they connect with, because that's where we're going to be getting the truth. And that's really what I encourage my clients to do, is to find their truth and let that guide them, rather than leaning on what the news is telling you, what you're seeing on social media, whatever this article is saying. I really want my clients to question everything and ask, how does this feel to me? Does this feel in alignment with me and what I want to create in my life?
Absolutely. I think that's a good way to go about it. I'm just curious because I've noticed some holistic health practitioners, they are really about it, and they will kind of bring it up to their clients, but I've also noticed like mixed results with that. And one of the biggest things that I've come to learn, and I think you're doing it really good, is when you try to beat something into somebody, or you try to kind of ream it into them, the early stages of my awakening that I had to learn, it doesn't really work. The best is leading by example. And it sounds like you're doing that. I always said, I had a saying like, yeah, you can lead a horse to water and you can't make it drink, but it'd be really cool if you could show that horse how awesome that water is, how like thirst quenching that water is, but sometimes you can't. So no, I wanted to just ask you that just out of curiosity. Now, if you don't mind, if you're cool with it, I want to bring up your reel to share with everybody.
Sure.
I do, because guys, you all are going to love this. It's pretty funny, and it has inspired a whole group of people. So yeah, let me bring it up real quick. It was really original and clever. I got to give that to you. So hold on, let me pull it up real fast. All right, I'm going to click this, and then we're going to take a step back. Make sure we got volume.
How can I help you?
All right.
You're in a fight with your husband right now? Okay. Do you want us to de-escalate it for you or turn it up a notch? Well, the default program is set to run the narrative that you're not valued. Use that one? Okay. I need you to raise your voice from a 5 to an 8 and tell him he's an ungrateful asshole who's only with you out of convenience. Yes, I'll hold.
And the whole music, bro.
Okay, that worked? Great. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Okay, have a great day, ma'am, and thank you for calling the Subconscious Customer Service line. Thanks for calling Subconscious Customer.
All right. I just, as a married man, like from the other end, it's funny because I saw that scenario like play out in my head, and I'm like, I've been through this shit before. I was like, I've been through it. So no, I wanted to bring that up just to share because it was good, definitely. And yeah, you've inspired us, everybody, all of the people who listen, and all the people on the Discord too. Now we want to start doing spiritual skit comedy.
We need more of it. We need more.
Well, like you were saying in the beginning, like it is. It's when you're trying to relay a message and you're trying to relay some kind of information, and you do it from a comedic standpoint. It sticks more. And you've definitely inspired me with this, and you have me on the drawing board right now. Right now, I'm coming up with a skit between ego and higher self. It's like you encounter this insanely triggering situation, and then you have ego and higher self come in, and you have the ego flaunting. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, you've inspired us, so thank you for that, for sure. Alrighty, guys. Well, Miss Autumn, we're gonna wind down for tonight. The number one thing I want to say is I absolutely love everything that you're doing. In my opinion, I think you're doing amazing things, and I think you're doing things. I see it as the right way. I mean, I know you're not looking for that, but if I'm saying, I think you're doing things in a great way, and I think you're focusing primarily on real health. You're getting to the root of these issues. You're understanding the correlation between emotional and physical health, and you're truly trying to be altruistic in the people that you're helping. When it comes to their well-being and their alignment, you're not just trying to give them meds, and you're not just trying to, mask these symptoms and make them sicker. I think you're doing a stellar job with the spiritual parenting. I'm not a parent, but I'm sure a lot of other people can agree. I think that's good. You're allowing your children to be their own human beings. And I think that's definitely super important. And honestly, you showcase a very positive message. You showcase a very meaningful message. And you agree. Right now, everybody, you always hear it from me, my listeners, but now you have somebody else telling it to you that it's time we drop our petty differences. It's time. I don't care if you think the earth is flat. We don't care if you think it's square. We don't care if you think it's in the shape of an eggplant. Do you like freedom? Do you like bodily autonomy? Do you want the government out of your life? Do you want to be able to have a self-sustainable lifestyle without regulations by government? All that. If you want those things, you're on board with us. Okay. And I think that's the way that we should be looking at it. And I think Dr. Autumn summed it up perfectly, because you're not just hearing me yap about it now, you're hearing somebody else say it as well. So nonetheless, Autumn, I have your link tree at the bottom of the description for both the Rumble and the YouTube videos. I will go ahead and I will paste it to X after we get done with our show tonight. But if there's anywhere else anybody can find you, and if you have any cool projects you're working on, why don't you let everybody know now?
Yeah, you can find me just through my website, thrivingrebelwellness.com, or Instagram. That's the only social media that I'm on. I do have actually quite a few classes planned for this year. So if you're interested, just keep an eye out for what's coming. Got some different workshops and a lot of self-work workshops that are going to be really fun. So that's all I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Well, keep up the good work, Autumn. Seriously, you're setting a good example. You are amongst a lot of other people I know who I've sat with who are setting great examples. And guys, let's keep doing it, man. This is the way. It really is. At this point, we have to, at least in my eyes, break out the fine-tuning tools. We've all gone through the demolition of ourselves. We've all used the sledgehammer, we've used the jackhammer, and we've gotten ourselves to where we are today. Now it's time we break out the hammer and the chisel and the detail tools, and we start refining our message, we start refining ourselves, and we start refining the energy that we put out into the world. Because as of now, this is what's going to be tomorrow. People like Autumn, people like me, people like you. And we have to continuously keep working, no matter how hard it might seem, and no matter how frustrated we might get sometimes. I got frustrated myself today. So, but I'm still here sitting with you guys, of course. So nonetheless, Autumn, if you could hang out for 5 minutes after the show ends. And other than that, guys, we will be back next week with Mr. Jesse Bonds. Jesse was on the season 2. He was one of the first guests on season 2 of BG Cast. He's coming back for round 2. We will be talking about how the New World Order is being rebranded under Trump. That is going to be the premise of our show next week. So I know that's already getting ruffling some feathers, just me saying that, but it's a huge possibility, and we're going to be diving into it. So nonetheless, thank you so much for joining me for another BG-Cast, a Wednesday live podcast. Go check out Dr. Autumn. Check out one of her classes. It might help you. You never know. Other than that, guys, I'll see you next Wednesday. Take care and have yourselves a wonderful night.